Rain pounded the pavement as Rowan Callister adjusted the hood of his worn gray sweatshirt, one hand gripping his son's tiny fingers, the other clutching a soggy brown paper bag with a microwavable dinner inside. "Dad, are we late for the train?" Oliver asked, his voice half lost in the buzz of the city. Rowan looked down at his 5-year-old, whose Spider-Man backpack was nearly bigger than he was. "Nah, buddy, we're right on time." He was lying. Again. The subway was packed, and they were already running late to the sitters. After that, Rowan had to be at the bar by 7 sharp or his manager would dock him again. The city always moved too fast, always took too much, and lately it felt like it never gave anything back. They reached the entrance of Union Square just as the sky let loose. People surged into the station like a wave, umbrellas collapsing, voices shouting, wet shoes slapping against concrete. That's when it happened. A woman stumbled near the top of the stairs. Someone had shoved her in the crowd and she lost her footing. Rowan dropped the bag, lunged forward, and caught her with both arms just before she hit the ground. "Whoa," he said, steadying her. She was soaked, gasping, her long coat clinging to her frame. Her dark brown hair stuck to her cheeks and her huge hazel eyes blinked up at him, startled. "Are you okay?" he asked. She nodded, breathless. I think so. Someone pushed." "Yeah, I saw." "You could have cracked your head open." Oliver tugged on his sleeve. "Dad, your dinner." Rowan glanced at the mashed bag on the ground. It was mostly preservatives anyway. The woman brushed the wet hair from her face and looked down at Oliver. "Is this your son?" "Yeah." "Oliver," he ruffled the kid's hair. "We're just trying to beat the rush." She gave a small smile. "Thank you for catching me." "No problem. You okay to walk?" She nodded again, then hesitated. "Can I buy you dinner as a thank you?" Rowan blinked. "What? You saved me from face planting on a concrete stair. It's the least I can do." He shook his head. "You don't have to do that. I want to." Oliver looked up, wide-eyed. "Can we get pizza, Dad?" Rowan looked at the woman, who gave a soft laugh. "Pizza it is," she said, holding out her hand. "I'm Kiera Dalton." Rowan took it. "Rowan Callister, and this is Ollie." Oliver beamed. "She smells like flowers." Rowan groaned. "That's not something we say out loud, bud." Kiera only laughed again, not seeming the least bit offended. The three of them ended up in a little pizzeria tucked between a dry cleaner and a pawn shop. It was warm inside, the smell of garlic and melted cheese filling the air. Kiera ordered a large pie, breadsticks, and soft drinks without blinking at the price. Rowan tried to argue, but she waved him off. "I insist," she said, sliding into the booth across from him. "Besides, I'm starving." He studied her as she pulled off her damp coat. Her blouse was silk, real silk, paired with tailored trousers that screamed designer. She didn't carry herself like someone who belonged in this neighborhood. "So what do you do?" he asked, curiosity getting the better of him. Kiera tilted her head. A little of this, a little of that." "That sounds suspicious," she laughed. "I work in finance." "Ah. Wall Street, something like that. You don't look like a finance shark. And you don't look like someone who saves women from crowds," she teased. Rowan gave her a crooked grin. "Touché." Oliver was too busy demolishing a breadstick to notice the way his dad kept glancing at Kiera. "So what do you do, Rowan?" she asked. He sighed. "Bartender, nights mostly. During the day, I'm a full-time dad. That's a lot." "Yeah, well, life happens." There was a brief, quiet moment between them, not awkward, just real. "I think that's amazing," Kiera said softly. Rowan looked at her, surprised. Most women either pitied him or avoided him completely once they realized he came with a kid and zero money. "You think working 2 jobs and living in a studio with a 5-year-old is amazing. I think showing up for your son every day is amazing," she said. "A lot of men wouldn't." Rowan didn't know what to say to that. After dinner, Kiera bought Oliver a small cannoli and insisted they split a second soda. When it was time to go, she walked them back to the station, holding Oliver's hand like she'd known him forever. "I can get you a car," she said, pulling out her phone. "No way," Rowan said. "We're subway people." Kiera smiled. "Well, subway people then." They stood on the platform, the train rattling in the distance. "I had a good time," Rowan said. "Me too." "I usually don't do this kind of thing." "Me neither," he hesitated. "Will I see you again?" Kiera gave him a look that made his heart skip. "I really hope so." The train screeched to a stop, doors slid open. She leaned in quickly and kissed his cheek. "Call me," she said, slipping a card into his hand before disappearing into the crowd. He watched her walk away, stunned, Oliver tugging at his sleeve again. "Dad." "Yeah, bud? Are we getting pizza again with the flower lady?" Rowan looked down at the card in his hand. It was thick, embossed. Kiera Dalton, Dalton Holdings. He had no idea what that meant. He had no idea who she really was. But something told him this wasn't the last time they'd see each other, not even close. Rowan stood behind the bar, wiping down the counter, his eyes flicking to the clock above the shelves of liquor bottles. The hands crawled past 10. His shift was only halfway through, but his mind had left hours ago, ever since he slipped the thick white business card into his wallet and felt it pressing against him like a secret. He'd looked up Dalton Holdings on the bar's dusty office computer during his break. The results were staggering. Real estate, tech investments, international acquisitions. A name that popped up in headlines next to skyscraper purchases and philanthropic galas. A name that shouldn't have been sitting across from him in a cracked leather booth eating pepperoni pizza and laughing with his son. "You gonna keep scrubbing that glass or actually pour something in it?" Miguel, one of the other bartenders, nudged his shoulder. Rowan blinked and set the spotless tumbler down. "Sorry, zoned out." Miguel leaned in, voice lowering. "You got that look again. Like you're thinking about something that's either gonna save your life or destroy it." Rowan gave a dry laugh. "Not sure which one it is yet." He didn't explain further. Miguel wouldn't get it, and Rowan wasn't even sure how to explain it to himself. Kiera had dropped into his life like a gust of wind through a locked door, and now he couldn't stop wondering what it all meant. At midnight, Rowan caught the train home, Oliver asleep on the sitter's couch when he arrived. He carried his son to the pull-out bed, tucked him in, and sat down at the chipped kitchen table in the corner of the room. He stared at the card again. The name felt heavier now. He didn't call. Instead, he waited. 3 days passed. On the 4th, she walked into the bar. It was early, before the post-work crowd rolled in, the place still quiet except for the low hum of music from the jukebox. Rowan was wiping down a table near the window when the door opened, and she stepped in wearing a navy trench coat and heels that didn't belong anywhere near this neighborhood. She spotted him instantly. "You're hard to track down," Rowan straightened, heart thudding. "You tracked me down. You didn't call." She walked closer and sat on a stool at the bar. "So I figured I'd make the first move." "I wasn't sure I should. Why not?" He tossed the rag onto the bar. "Because I Googled you, Kiera." She didn't flinch. And I don't belong anywhere near your world, my world." She raised an eyebrow. "Is that what this is about?" He folded his arms. "You own half of Manhattan." "Only a quarter," she said dryly. "And I don't see what that has to do with pizza and a kid who told me I smelled like flowers." He exhaled, frustrated. "You don't understand. You're someone people like me serve drinks to, not someone we date." She looked at him for a long moment, then stood. "Come with me," he blinked. "What? Come with me? You have 10 minutes before this place fills up. I'll have you back before your boss even notices." "What, you want to take me for a walk?" "No," she said. "I want to show you something." Rowan hesitated only a second before grabbing his jacket and following her out. They walked 3 blocks in silence until she turned into a narrow alley between 2 apartment buildings. At the end was a rusted gate. She pushed it open. Inside was a hidden garden. Ivy-covered brick walls surrounded a small courtyard lit by strings of gold bulbs. There was a wrought iron bench, a cracked fountain, and a fig tree leaning toward the light. Rowan stared. "This doesn't exist." "It does," she said. "My grandfather used to bring me here when I was little. It's the only place I could breathe when everything else felt too loud." He looked around, stunned. "Why'd you bring me here?" "Because I wanted you to see that my world isn't just penthouses and portfolio meetings. This is part of it too." He turned toward her. "Why me?" "I don't know." She met his eyes. "You caught me when no one else even noticed I was falling. That doesn't happen to me, ever." They stood in silence, the air cool and still. "I don't have much to offer," he said finally. She stepped closer. "Neither do I. If you take away the money, I'm just someone who works too much and doesn't sleep enough." Rowan looked down at her. "You're not what I expected. Neither are you." The moment stretched between them, fragile and real. Then his phone buzzed. He checked the screen. Boss is asking where I am, she nodded. Go. He turned to leave, then paused. Will you come back? Kiera smiled, something softer in her eyes. Wouldn't be the first time I broke into a bar, he laughed, then jogged off toward the street. Behind him, she lingered a moment longer in the hidden garden, then slipped out the way she'd come. That night, Rowan couldn't sleep. He lay awake staring at the ceiling while Oliver snored softly beside him. He didn't understand what Kiera wanted from him. But for the first time in a long time, he wanted to find out. Rowan adjusted the collar of his only button-up shirt, the sleeves stiff from being air-dried on the radiator, and knocked twice on the tall glass door in front of him. He hadn't expected to be standing inside the lobby of a luxury building that morning. But when Kiera had shown up outside the bar after his shift ended wearing jeans and a windbreaker, holding 2 coffees and a paper bag of croissants, he hadn't exactly said no when she asked if he wanted to walk with her. That walk had turned into a cab ride uptown, and now here he was, standing in front of a concierge desk, feeling like the only guy in the building who didn't own cufflinks. The doorman had raised an eyebrow but hadn't stopped him. Apparently, Kiera had called ahead. The elevator doors opened with a soundless glide. Kiera stepped out barefoot, her hair pulled into a loose knot, wearing a navy sweater dress that looked like it had been tailored to her exact frame. She carried a mug in one hand and looked like she'd been awake for hours. I wasn't sure you'd come up, she said. I almost didn't. I figured. She stepped aside and motioned him in. The penthouse was quiet, the kind of quiet that came from thick walls and triple-paned windows. Light poured in from the floor to ceiling glass panes that stretched across the entire wall behind her. The view overlooked the park, endless green and gold stretching beneath a sky streaked with pale morning light. Do you live here alone? Rowan asked, following her cautiously into the open space. For now, her voice was neutral, but he caught the flicker in her expression as she walked toward the kitchen. You don't have to stay long, she added. I wanted to show you my real life, no distractions. He glanced around, every surface gleamed. There were no family photos, no signs of clutter, no warmth, just carefully chosen pieces of furniture and a silence that felt designed. I always thought money made things easier, he said. It makes some things easier, she replied. But not the important ones. She handed him a mug and leaned against the island. My mother passed away when I was 13. My father dealt with it by throwing himself into work. I didn't see much of him after that. Rowan took a sip, unsure what to say. I built Dalton Holdings from the pieces he left behind, she said. But sometimes I wonder if I did it for myself or just to prove I could. He watched her, surprised by the rawness in her voice. You don't have to prove anything to me. That's the thing. She looked up at him. I feel like I do, like I always do with everyone. He set the mug down. I didn't come here to judge you. I came because you asked. I know, she said quietly. And that's why I wanted you to see it. I didn't want to pretend anymore. Rowan crossed the kitchen slowly and stopped a few feet from her. What are we doing, Kiera? I don't know, she admitted. But I know I haven't stopped thinking about you since that night. He ran a hand through his hair, hesitating. I've got a kid. I've got a job that barely pays the rent. I've got no idea what next month looks like. I'm not asking for guarantees, she said. I just want to see where this goes. He stepped closer. You sure about that, are you? She didn't wait for an answer. She closed the space between them and kissed him. Soft, uncertain, like she was asking a question she wasn't sure he'd answer. Rowan's hands found her waist instinctively, and for a moment, the rest of the world, his bills, her boardrooms, everything faded into the background. When they finally pulled apart, he rested his forehead against hers. I haven't done this in a long time, Kiera smiled faintly. Neither have I. A knock at the door broke the moment. She stepped back, smoothing her dress, and opened it just enough to talk to someone in the hallway. Rowan caught the name, Marjorie, and then something else. He's here now, I'll call you later. When Kiera returned, her expression was unreadable. Everything okay? He asked. She nodded, but she didn't elaborate. I should go, he said, checking his watch. I've got to pick up Oliver at the sitters. I'll have the driver bring you. I'm good with the train. Rowan, I appreciate it, he said, but I'd rather walk. She didn't argue. As he left the building, the doorman gave him a look curious, maybe even amused, but Rowan ignored it. The cold air hit him like a wall as he stepped outside. He needed the space to think. He'd kissed a woman whose shoes probably cost more than his rent. A woman who knew things about grief and pressure that he understood all too well. But there was still something she wasn't telling him. That name at the door, Marjorie, it echoed in his head. Back at the apartment, Oliver was drawing on the floor with crayons when Rowan walked in. "Did the flower lady come back?" he asked without looking up. Rowan crouched beside him. "Yeah, she did." Oliver looked up. "Is she gonna stay forever?" Rowan paused. "I don't know yet, buddy." But as he watched his son draw a lopsided heart with a green crayon, he realized something unsettling was beginning to shift inside him. He wanted her to, and that terrified him more than anything. Rowan stood on the rooftop of a midtown building, the wind tugging at his jacket as he stared over the glittering city. The air smelled of distant rain and spring. Below, horns blared and lights flickered, but up here, it was quiet unnaturally so. Kiera stood several feet away from him, her arms wrapped around herself, not for warmth, but like she was holding something in. He hadn't meant to follow her up here. After her invitation to join her at a fundraiser, he'd almost said no. But Oliver was with the sitter for the night, and something in Rowan had stopped resisting. The event had been in a grand ballroom filled with crystal chandeliers and people whose names he'd only ever seen printed beneath headlines. Kiera had introduced him, not as a friend or a date, but simply as Rowan. No labels, no explanations. Still, the looks had lingered longer than polite conversation allowed. Rowan hadn't said anything when she excused herself and slipped through the side door. He'd followed her without thinking, finding her here alone. "You didn't come back inside," he said finally. Kiera didn't look at him. "I needed air, I get that." He stepped beside her, careful not to touch. "They think I'm unraveling," she said, voice distant. "Who?" "The board. The partners, my father's old advisors. They think I've lost my edge." Rowan glanced at her. "Because of me," her jaw tightened. "Because I haven't been acting like the version of myself they curated after he died." He waited. "I used to walk into rooms like that and feel in control. Now I walk in and I feel like I'm playing dress-up in someone else's life." Rowan looked out at the city again. "You're not playing dress-up," she exhaled slowly. "They found out I've been seeing you," he nodded once, "and they think it's reckless, that I'm distracted. That I'm making decisions based on emotion. And are you?" She turned to face him. "Yes, for the first time in years I am." He didn't respond right away. "You don't owe them your happiness," he said finally. "I do owe them stability. That's what I've built my company on." Rowan stepped closer. "But at what cost?" Kiera didn't answer. The sky above them was deepening into indigo, the first stars beginning to show. "I'm not trying to ruin your life," he said quietly. "I know. But I won't pretend to be someone I'm not just to fit into it. I'm not asking you to." He studied her face, the tension in it, the battle just beneath the surface. "I think you are," he said. She looked away. "I've never had to choose between what I want and what's expected of me." "Then maybe it's time you did." Kiera went still. Below them, the city kept moving, but up here, everything slowed. "I want you," she said finally, voice low. "And Oliver." Rowan's breath caught. "But if I choose this," she continued, "I'm stepping away from everything I've spent the last decade building." He didn't try to interrupt. "I've already made a decision," she said, turning toward him. "I called a meeting. I'm stepping back from day-to-day operations. I'll keep my stake, but I'm handing over control to the board." He blinked. "You're serious?" I realized I was holding on out of fear, but that company isn't my future. This is. She reached into her coat and pulled out a folded envelope. "I set up a trust for Oliver, nothing flashy. Just something to secure his future." Rowan stepped back. "Kiera, don't say no," she said. "It's not about me trying to buy anything. It's about giving the boy who told me I smelled like flowers a shot at something better." He took the envelope but didn't open it. "I've never had anyone see me beyond what I'm worth," she added. "You did. When I was falling literally, you didn't hesitate." Rowan stared at her, heart pounding. "I want a life," she whispered. "A real one, not just a title and a portfolio. I want mornings with coffee and crayons on the floor. I want messy, I want honest, I want you." His voice cracked. "I don't know how to do any of this." "Neither do I." He reached out and pulled her into him, her arms sliding around his waist as she buried her face in his shoulder. They stood like that for a long time. Later that month, Kiera moved into a brownstone in Brooklyn, nothing extravagant, but full of light and space, and the sound of Oliver's laughter bouncing off the walls. Rowan transferred to a daytime job managing a small cafe she'd quietly purchased under his name. It wasn't about money, it was a gesture. A clean start. One evening, Oliver came home from school with a paper crown and declared it family pizza night. Kiera ordered 3 pies and Rowan built a blanket fort in the living room. They ate cross-legged under it, surrounded by twinkle lights and the smell of melted cheese. At one point, Kiera leaned over and whispered, "I never thought my life would look like this." Rowan kissed her temple. "Me neither, but I wouldn't trade it for anything." He wrapped an arm around her as Oliver sang a made-up song at the top of his lungs. And in that moment, with the world quiet beyond their walls, everything finally made sense. They had each other, and they had everything they needed. The scent of lemongrass and honey drifted through the kitchen as Rowan stood barefoot over the stove, flipping pancakes that Oliver had insisted be shaped like dinosaurs. Outside the window, sunlight bathed the small backyard, where a new wooden swing hung from the old maple Kiera had planted just last week. It was Saturday morning, the kind that once felt like a luxury and now belonged entirely to them. Kiera padded in, still in one of Rowan's flannel shirts, her hair a tangle from sleep. She leaned against the doorway, her eyes trailing over the scene. "I thought I was making breakfast today," she said, voice husky with sleep. "You were," Rowan said, not looking up. But your sous chef revolted and declared himself head of kitchen operations. Oliver, seated at the counter with a crayon map of his imaginary dinosaur kingdom, looked up proudly. "I'm the boss of the pancakes." Kiera walked over and kissed the top of his head. "Then I hope you're paying your staff well." Dad gets 2 pancakes and a hug. Rowan turned, plate in hand. "I'll take it." They sat together at the table, sun spilling across the wood. Kiera's foot brushed Rowan's under the table, and he glanced at her, catching the quiet smile that hadn't left her face since she'd moved into the brownstone. "I got a call yesterday," she said, pouring syrup onto her plate, "from someone I used to work with. They want me to consult on a new educational initiative, low-income school districts, infrastructure development. It's not corporate, it's real." Rowan looked at her over his coffee. "Do you want to do it?" "I think I do," she said. "But only if you're okay with me traveling sometimes, not a lot. Just a few days here and there." He reached across the table and took her hand. "We figure it out, that's what we do now." She nodded, her thumb tracing the back of his hand. "I never thought I'd want something this ordinary." "It's not ordinary," he said. "It's ours." Oliver, now painting syrup stripes on his stegosaurus-shaped pancake, looked up suddenly. "Can I have a baby sister?" Kiera choked on her coffee, coughing into her napkin. Rowan blinked. "Where did that come from?" "My friend has one," Oliver said matter-of-factly. "She drools a lot." "I want one that doesn't drool." Kiera recovered, laughter in her eyes. "That's not exactly how it works." Oliver shrugged. "Okay, then can I have a dog?" Rowan looked at Kiera. "That sounds slightly more feasible," she grinned. "Let's start with a dog and see how that goes." Later that afternoon, while Oliver played in the yard with a rubber football Kiera had picked up on a whim, Rowan leaned against the porch railing, watching her. She was crouched in the grass, trying to tie the swing's rope tighter, her fingers threading with quick precision. "You know," he said, "I used to think people like you lived on a different planet." She glanced up. "And now I think you just didn't have anyone to bring you back down to earth." She stood and brushed her hands off. "I think I didn't know what I was missing." He stepped toward her and took her face in his hands. "I love you." The words landed with weight, not because they were new, but because they were true, not rushed, not questioned, just real. Kiera placed her hands on his chest, her eyes never leaving his. "I love you too." They kissed under the afternoon sun, the world quiet for one perfect second. That evening, they invited a few neighbors over. Rowan grilled in the yard while Kiera strung paper lanterns across the fence. Oliver ran around showing off his room to every guest, proudly pointing out the dinosaur drawings taped to the wall. As the stars came out, Rowan watched Kiera laugh with a woman from next door, her posture relaxed, her eyes alight. She looked nothing like the woman he first met in the rain. She looked like home. When the guests had gone and the dishes were done, Rowan found her sitting on the back steps, a blanket around her shoulders, feet bare on the cool grass. He sat beside her and offered the last glass of wine. "I've been thinking," she said, taking it. "That's dangerous," she nudged him with her elbow. "I want to marry you," Rowan froze. "You what?" "I want to marry you," she repeated, this time slower, surer. "Not in a ballroom, not in a press release, just us, maybe a few friends. Maybe Oliver officiates. He'd insist on wearing a cape." "I hope so." Rowan exhaled, overwhelmed. "You're serious?" "I've never been more." He took her hand and kissed her knuckles. "Then let's do it." They got married in the park down the street 2 months later, under a canopy of trees and fairy lights. Oliver wore a cape and threw flower petals instead of rings. Kiera's dress was simple, her smile anything, but there was no orchestra, no press. Just laughter, dancing, and the kind of joy that doesn't need a spotlight to shine. Afterward, they walked home with their shoes in their hands, Oliver asleep across Rowan's shoulders. Years later, long after the city had changed again and again, they still lived in the same brownstone. The swing in the yard was replaced with a bigger one, sturdy enough for 2 kids, now a girl with Kiera's eyes and Oliver's stubbornness. Rowan ran the cafe down the block, and Kiera split her time between home and projects she actually believed in. She never went back to boardrooms. She never missed them. Their life wasn't perfect. It was better. It was theirs. Forever.